Won't you listen to reason? Will you open your eyes? It's a wonder what you'll find with an open mind. You may be surprised. Yeah, gotta get away from this illusion for the sake of the world. This delusion, it's gotta go. Yeah.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Atheist Experience. We're live. It's Sunday, September 29th, 2013. I didn't do that from memory. It's right up on the screen. I never know what day it is. I'm Matt Dillahunty. Joining me this week, Jen Peeples, the president of the Atheist Community of Austin. I just love saying that.
Oh,
it's
thank
awesome. We're here today. I've had kind of a crazy busy week and a half or so. Last weekend I was at Aposticon in Omaha, Nebraska. I did an hour-long mentalism show, no debate, no talk, just a show at the convention, which was not recorded, and that was intentional, so you don't get to see it unless you were there. And Thursday, this week right now in Austin, the Religious News Writers Convention is going on, and I sat in on a panel discussion about church-state separation, but really it was religion in the public square. It was myself, Kathy Miller from the Texas Freedom Network, who, by the way, rocks and kicks all the ass there is, so I don't have to do, I had no heavy lifting to do during that panel.
Yeah.
'Cause she's a powerhouse. And a couple other gentlemen, one of them, I apologize, I've already forgotten exactly what organization he's with. And the other one is a lawyer for the Coates High School cheerleaders, the cheerleaders who have the big banners with the Bible signs on. And one of the things that I pointed out is they keep saying this is about free speech.
Yeah.
Because the cheerleaders bought the banners, they paid for the stuff, and the school has no right to censor their free speech. And I agree, the school shouldn't be able to censor their free speech, and if they took that banner and, like, before the game hung it up on the stands, it would be roughly the equivalent of somebody wearing a t-shirt.
Right.
But as they do it as part of the opening ceremony of the game, where they are in uniform as representatives of the school, and these the football team comes breaking through the banner, it's an implicit school activity.
Yeah.
It's an endorsement. And I'm pretty sure that this is a lie about this being free speech, because if they instead had maybe dyed their skirt to be the other team's colors and wore a bikini top with body paint that said "Our faculty sucks," I think their free speech would be, kind of shut down. I'm pretty sure if they had profane and perhaps racist messages on that banner, the school would put a stop to it. Maybe if they pick verses from a Quran, or maybe if they let me pick Bible verses, because I guarantee you I can pick some doozies that the school would not want on that banner. So let's stop pretending it's about free speech. It's hard enough for kids in schools to have to deal with being the outsider without the cheerleaders at the school football game turning this into an implicit endorsement of one religion over the rest of them, or over none. So I've got a debate this Thursday coming up at Texas State in San Marcos, and it's a completely different format, which I'm really happy with. Instead of the joint press conference, we're each going to have like 7-minute opening statements, and then the rest of it is questions from the moderator, from the crowd, and then back and forth at each other.
Cool.
So good stuff. And I've heard, actually I haven't just heard, I can see him. Dave Silverman, the president of American Atheists, is here today.
Wow.
He's going to sneak over. Oh, he didn't sneak over. You need a mic.
I snuck over.
Nobody can hear you until you're here.
I know. Oh, look. I found a microphone.
Yes,
A
you
microphone.
have.
Hi, Matt.
How you doing?
Again, good to see
Hi.
you.
You were down for the Religious News Writers Conference as well, weren't you?
It was a lot of fun. We did a panel for the religion news writers on the breadth of the atheism movement. So it was American Atheists, Secular Student Alliance, CFI, Camp Quest, American Humanist Association. We were all there to give a short 3-minute presentation each, 3-minute per person presentation to the press, so they knew who to contact when their specific issues came up. It was very productive, and it was very well received by the religious news writers. I was impressed.
Cool.
Good.
Yeah, and tomorrow Monday, I'm giving a firebrand atheism speech. That's the speech where I make the point that firebrand atheism is not only more effective, but it's also the nicer thing to do. It's also the more ethical thing to do. It may not be the easier thing to do, but it is the better thing to do. And I'm giving that at the University of Texas tomorrow at 7 p.m. at Hog Room 1.120. I don't quite know what that means, but
they will.
They will.
Students will sort it out.
Yeah, and then I'm going home. And then I'm preparing for the National Convention, which is coming up on Easter weekend.
It's always Easter.
Awesome. Always Easter, except when there's a Reason Rally.
Sure.
Always Easter weekend. We are really doing a great job at making this convention non-generic. So we've got the first professional football player coming. We've got the winner of Survivor.
The first
atheist professional football player.
That's like the first professional football player to be really kind
Well, no, it's also the first, the first professional football player to attend an atheist event.
Yes.
Okay, that's where I was going.
Yeah.
We also have the first winner of Survivor to attend an atheist event or to speak at an atheist event. We've got another rock star. We've got the bassist from the Spin Doctors is coming. So we've got a lineup at this convention that's diverse and memorable to kind of make the American Atheist Conventions as non-generic as possible. And we've been trying to publicize it, but we've been having problems.
Well, where's the convention going to be?
It's going to be in Salt Lake City.
And you've had trouble publicizing an atheist convention in Salt Lake City?
Amazingly,
you know.
Well, you know what? We had trouble in Des Moines because Des Moines was supposedly a Christian city, but we are having a lot more trouble in Salt Lake City.
Interesting.
Because there are 9 billboard companies in Salt Lake City, and none of them will put up our billboard.
Well, that's wonderful.
Yeah, that's wonderful because
that's worthy of some publicity in and of itself.
It is worthy of publicity. It's going to get us. We're going to have a protest. We're going to have an event. It'll probably be somewhere around Halloween. We'll put some of that information up on the atheist.org website when it becomes finalized. But you know, when you're dealing with a city where the billboard companies are all afraid of the church. Clearly, they're all afraid of the church. You can feel the oppression. You can sense what the atheists in Salt Lake City are feeling, and that's why it's so important that American atheists go to these cities. You know, we're not going to be going to the liberal cities. We're not going to be going to San Francisco or Seattle. We're going to be going into the belly of the beast because there's some fixing that needs to be done.
So the businesses are terrified of the church, and the church is terrified of atheists. It's great that you're going to be doing this around Halloween because we can talk about who's actually scarier.
Yes. Yes. That's going to be the theme. What exactly is Salt Lake City scared of?
Yep.
Yeah.
So, woo. So that's it. I'm liking your show though.
Is this better than O'Reilly?
Better is such a broad word.
Oh, come on. That was the
Are you
most...
going to get in my face and call me a
Get off my show. That was the softball question ever. Thanks, Dave, for coming on. We'll have you on again sometime when you can sit in and take calls. And
I look forward to that.
maybe we can get Bill to call in.
Ooh,
Could happen.
Hey, you never know.
Yeah.
Can't prove it won't happen.
All right. See, Dave comes in, Dave goes out. Never a miscommunication.
Can't explain that.
But Jen's got some stuff for us to talk about before we get to calls. I see the lines are full, and we'll be starting the calls shortly. But there's a new study that came out.
Yeah, actually, I think it was published like in January of this year. And it has to do with the effect of religious belief on major depression. So the conventional wisdom is that if you are a religious person, that your religious beliefs can in some way buffer major depressive episodes or prevent them or something like that. And there's been like a lot of mixed results from different studies about this phenomenon. Some of them say, yeah, it helps. Others say, nah, not so much. So this one actually was published in Psychological Medicine, which is a British journal. It involved 7 countries, including the UK. And it included 8,318 participants in there. So it was a large study. And what they did was they did a baseline questionnaire when people entered the study that assessed their religious beliefs. And based on the strength of their religious beliefs, I guess they were characterized as either strong believers or the spiritual, not religious types, or the non-believers. And they followed up with these people at 6 and 12 months. And so it was a prospective study, which is a little bit different than a retrospective study where you rely on people's memory of what happened. So this was a prospective study, and at 6 and 12 months they were assessed on with the questionnaire and also DSM-4 criteria and another instrument they used to assess whether they had had a major depressive episode. And it turns out that the people who reported being religious were more likely to have had major depressive episodes, and the results were statistically significant. It was something like 10.5% of religious people had experienced a major depression in the last year versus 7% of the non-believers. And then, so they said, oh, this is interesting. So they went back in and they looked at the data again, and it turns out that the strength of religious belief is actually positively correlated to suffering a major depressive episode. So it would be easy to leap to the conclusion and say, oh, religious belief causes major depression, but that's not what the study says. At best, what we can say is that religious belief does not protect you from major depression.
Yeah, it's really, I mean, obviously, first of all, not trying to say anything negative about depression. I mean, there are plenty of people who suffer from a number of conditions, including depression, and by all means, get some help. You're not alone, and there are ways to deal with it. Obviously, this study shows that perhaps you shouldn't be relying solely on religion for help if you're experiencing these things. But I wonder, you talked about the seriousness of belief, but I wonder, did they divide it all based on like specific tenets of belief? Like, for example, were fundamentalists less likely or more likely to have depressive episodes, or?
I don't think they split it up that way. What they were really looking at, and again, the country that had, I think, the strongest correlation was the UK, where you're unlikely to encounter genuine fundamentalists there. But what they did do was assess the strength of someone's belief, so how much they believed in it, and that's separate from actual church attendance.
Okay.
So
it's kind of a self-reporting thing about how important this is to you. How does it affect your daily life decisions?
Yeah, and so when they did that, they came up with assessment, and it basically showed really clearly that the strength of belief is positively correlated with major depression.
Yeah, I'd love to see him kind of dig back in to see what specific beliefs there are, because I would be curious to find out if perhaps the particular denominations or doctrinal beliefs that require somebody to deny their own sexuality, or perhaps are more literalist traditions that make people fearful of consequences and going to hell, if those things contribute more to
I was having a conversation with some people before the show when we were talking about that. That is a very interesting question that this research raises, and that is, if you belong to some kind of religion that creates a lot of anxiety because you're supposed to live up to this religious ideal, and you're not supposed to think about sex, and you're not supposed to drink, and you've got to go to church, and what if you're not praying enough, and all these things that create this anxiety, could that be contributing to, major depression? I
mean, the Southern Baptist tradition that I grew up in, and along with a number of other fundamentalist traditions, would be like constantly portraying this image that you cannot possibly live up to the expectations, which puts you in this cycle of trying to do your best and failing, and then seeking forgiveness, and I'm going to reaffirm my life, and get back, and you're constantly backslidden. I need to get back with Jesus and do those things. I don't know how much this extends to other religions.
I don't know, but what you just described sounds just like an abusive relationship.
It does.
That is an abusive relationship.
Yeah. But he loves you.
Yes, of course.
That's the way it is.
Yeah.
You're a terrible person, and you deserve all the punishment, and you better love me, or you're going to suffer eternal punishment. But I love you.
Yeah.
And we've talked about that before as well. I don't want to oversimplify, and I did a video on my personal YouTube account the other day where I talked about trying not to paint with too broad of a brush. The Explore God movement that's happening here in Austin is an initiative by 350 churches, where instead of their Sunday night services, they get together at people's homes and discuss some of the questions about God. Beth and I have been participating with it with a local church. I will not be going tonight because it's Back Cruise weekend and there's lots of fun going on. But I will be going next week for the last week in this. I've had a good time. And the one thing that keeps coming up for me is this week is Christianity too narrow? And coming from the tradition that I was in, the answer is no. No, Christianity has gotten wider and wider and wider and wider.
Yeah.
And while that's wonderful that there are more and more decent people who identify as Christian, and there are tons of them, and they support all kinds of same-sex marriage in some cases, and they are much more, much less fire and brimstone and everything else. They also have a less sturdy foundation for their beliefs.
Yes.
They have separated themselves from a firm biblical foundation and relied more on their personal interpretation of feeling. And that's what I got from a lot of this Explore God stuff is there's a bunch of people sitting around talking about what their opinion is about God. And these are believers, and they've invited a non-believer in amongst them to, I don't know, talk a lot. But if there was a God, there should be no need for people to sit around and express what their opinions are about what God wants. It should be clear to everybody, and yet it's not. And that's how we end up with thousands of denominations that all identify with the same label. And so while I'm reluctant to paint with too broad a brush, on occasion I will. And if you have departed in your beliefs from Orthodox Christianity and yet kept the label, for example, it's not my fault if you get some paint on you when we're talking about these issues. And that goes for variations in Muslims. And as soon as Scientology starts having different groups and sects, it'll be true there too. But you want to take some calls?
Yes, let's go ahead and get to the calls.
We've got Harold in Lumberton. How are you?
Hey, how's it going, Matt?
Pretty good.
Good.
I guess I called in on a good day, religion and depression, because religion does make me depressed. I like to say that I was born into a Catholic family. I became an altar boy, so I served the church for many years, and believed in God until I was about 15. And now I'm, I guess, an outed atheist, you could say. My whole family is Catholic or religious in some sense, and basically my mom doesn't even like me or my daughter, who is 12, to even say the word atheist in her house.
Sure.
Which is kind of hard because we're not allowed to express who we really are. We don't put those kind of, oppressive rules on anybody else in our family. Anybody can talk about anything in my house. But I want to get to the point while I called is I go to college. It's a small college, and I'm in a small Mississippi town. And so religion is, a daily topic.
Is it a private college or a state college?
It is it's a Pearl River Community College. I don't know if it's actually a private or a state college, but they do receive state money.
Yeah, that's a community college. So.
I'm a veteran, so I know they're getting money from the government.
Yeah.
I get Pell Grants. I know they're getting money from the government.
Yeah.
And so on a day-to-day basis, I see flyers, religious flyers, inviting people off of campus to come do this, come do that.
Yeah, and that's okay.
Is that totally legal?
Yeah,
Yep.
it is.
And it's also legal for you to put up flyers. One of the things about this is that because they're allowing the religious groups to do this, they have to also allow you to do it as well. Otherwise, it's discrimination. And by the way, from two veterans sitting up here, thanks to you for your service as well.
Thank you guys for your service as well. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
And yes, just so America knows, you have godless, baby-killing people defending you. Not the baby killing.
Yeah.
But, you do have atheists defending your country.
Yeah, there are plenty of atheists in foxholes, and actually they're the ones that I want in the foxholes, because I'd rather have the person who realizes that his or her ass is grass and that they need to make a decision and do something, than the one who decides that this is the time to start praying.
Yeah.
Right. And I was just online looking at something, and hopefully atheists do get chaplains. They need somebody they can go talk to, and I hope this does get pushed through.
Yeah, short of defunding or, disestablishing the chaplains corps altogether, we really do need secular chaplains in the military. But just as an upside, I will tell you that down in San Antonio, they've got a lot of the Air Force enlisted training that goes on there at Lackland, and they actually do have a humanist meeting on Sunday. And I just read from a friend of mine on Facebook that they had 46 airman basics at this humanist meeting this weekend. So,
Wow.
so these things are happening in the training installations, and so people are coming into the military as non-believers, and they are creating. I guess this actually wasn't created by the airmen themselves. It's actually some permanent party people there who realized that, young people coming into the military need the support of a community. And so they formed a community for these young non-believers coming into the military. So this is happening.
Well, that's great news to hear.
I'm kind of with Jen on this in that, until we get rid of the chaplaincy, I think there should definitely be secular chaplains there for all and because one of the things I would think that religious individuals should probably be complaining about the chaplains a little bit more, because in order to try to serve everybody, they have really watered everything down in some cases. And so what you end up with is the chaplain who doesn't want to say anything about anything, trying to minister to a whole bunch of people. And then the fundamentalist chaplain, and those are your only two options, because nobody's ever going to tell that fundamentalist that he needs to be, more wide in his interpretation or her interpretation.
Yeah, and so you end up with a watered down flavor. And the only chaplains in my experience in the military, the only chaplains who do that, respect everybody's beliefs and be inoffensive are the Unitarian Universalists. They're the only ones that can do that because that's what they do.
I think what we really need, irrespective of whether we get rid of the chaplaincy, is trained, qualified mental health professionals, grief counselors, people who are trained in dealing with PTSD,
absolutely,
people who understand when somebody does or doesn't need leave, what qualifies as an emergency for that individual that we might not have recognized. Of course, when a family member dies, everybody's like, oh, well, yeah, that's obvious. But if maybe there's a family member or a close personal friend that was part of raising you, that this could be even more traumatic than losing a parent. And there may be a lot of other situations like that it would be really handy to have experts. And I know that I think the military does have some experts, but they're not stationed all the time with people the way chaplains are.
Right.
It's just, kind of turning gears here, well, staying on the same subject is that, often atheists, we feel alone, and I'm glad I found your show. Me and my daughter both watch it. But an atheist, especially in the South, as you guys know, you can find yourself alone.
Yeah. Actually, I was having a conversation, in fact, with Dave Silverman last night on the Bat Cruise, and we were talking about how a lot of times as an atheist in a community, you feel alone and you feel like you can't be really yourself with people because you can't divulge the fact that you're an atheist in some communities. And
so, but the problem is you pay a price, and you
absolutely.
guys are well aware of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And so
when
you do finally tell people that you're an atheist, they reject you.
Right.
And ironically enough, they reject you at the point when you are being the most authentic, the most real to them. And they say, no, we're not going to accept you.
Right.
So, and that's very much like it was coming out as gay or lesbian like 25 years ago, when you couldn't say these things to people. You had to pretend that you were heterosexual, or you might get rejected by people you cared about deeply.
I just saw a poll yesterday. It was an older poll 10 years ago, and they said who would you be least likely to vote for? And atheist was number one. So before atheist, you would have a gay president, a Muslim president, and then it was black and a couple other distinctions. But I couldn't believe that.
Must be a very old poll.
Well, there was that University of Minnesota, I don't remember. Yeah. Anyway, there are a couple quick points I wanted to make before we end up moving on to another caller. One thing, on your topic, when I was talking about not paint with a broad brush, one of the ways in which I don't want to do that is to fail to recognize that depression affects everybody.
Yeah.
And actually there's fairly serious depression in the atheist community in some regards related to like philosophical ideas like nihilism.
Yeah.
This idea that, oh, ultimately everything's going to end, so that makes it all meaningless. And I fight against this all the time with people because it doesn't make it meaningless. The sort of meaning and purpose that people are feeling despondent about are the things that we'd find objectionable. If the government picked what everybody's job was going to be, if your parents picked your major, we'd rebel against that. And yet some people are instead comforted by the idea that there is this God who has dictated what your purpose is going to be in life, and that the world would just be a terrible place if that wasn't true. And instead, if it's not true, which I have no reason to think that it is, you get to pick your own meaning and purpose in life, and your life gets to be whatever you want it to be.
Yeah.
And isn't that exactly what we'd all want?
Yeah, and that's to me, it's much more beautiful to think that everything evolved and we're almost a random chance. That's much more beautiful than someone snapped his fingers and put us here. And that's a conversation me and my daughter have a lot. Yeah. And I know you need to go to another caller, Matt, so I'll make this quick.
Sure.
When I remember I first told my stepdad that I didn't believe in God, you know what he told me? He said, then why don't you kill yourself?
Yeah. Yeah, we get emails like that all the time.
I've heard it before, and actually I've responded to this a number of different ways, but about a week or so ago, Ricky Gervais said something in an interview, which is probably a much shorter and better version of what I used to say, which is, atheists have nothing to die for and everything to live for.
Exactly.
Yeah. So,
me and my child, we have one life to live, and we're going to live it to the fullest. And while we're doing that, we're not going to go around killing. We're going to live our lives, and we're going to treat people how we want to be treated, and we're going to try to make the world a better place while we're here.
Good on you, Harold. Thanks for calling.
Right.
Thank you, guys.
Well, and I would go further and say that most Christians are not actually living their lives; they're just waiting to die, because
this is just a place to wipe your feet before the real life.
Yeah.
And by the way, I know we're today in particular, we've talked a lot about Christians. I would imagine that the study that you looked at was primarily looking at Christians.
It didn't specify.
It was just religious and spiritual in general.
Spiritual beliefs.
If we have people watching the show who are Muslims, Hindus, Scientologists, please let me have a Scientologist call.
Please call.
Feel free to call in. And people ask, why do you guys do this show? First of all, it's about promoting and having discussions. I don't believe in any gods. I might rail against the Christian God more because it's the one where the followers are the most prominent in my culture, actually affecting people's rights. And it's the one that I'm most familiar with because I grew up in that tradition. But we don't believe in any gods here. Thor, Zeus, but we can, it's a caller-driven show, so we're going to talk about whatever the callers want to talk about for the most part. But when people ask why we do it, the quick and easy answer is because it works. When we started broadcasting the show, the show's been on for 15 years or so, and I've been hosting for about 8 now. And when it started hitting the internet, we would get occasional emails. Oh, thank you guys so much for the show. It's really helped me out. I used to be a fundamentalist. I used to identify as an agnostic. I used to be a moderate theist of some stripe or whatever. And now I have better arguments, or I identify as an atheist, or identify as a skeptic, or identify as a humanist. And that would happen on occasion, and then it would happen with a little more frequency. And now it's many times a week, and every convention I go to, there are people coming up saying, thank you so much for what you guys have done, because the work that you guys have done on the show has really been helpful. I only needed one person to ever say that to make every batshit crazy call worth it. But the fact is there's thousands of them at this point. And it's because of the efforts of the people working behind the scenes and the people who are up here and the actual callers who allow us to have the conversation. So.
Oh, and I will add that in about 3 weeks, the show will actually enter its 17th year of production. 17
years, see?
So
I skipped a whole year.
So we're wrapping up 16 years on the air.
Yeah, this is show 8. Well, it's show number 833.
Yeah.
Not every number has a show. They started a tradition where if we skip a week, it still gets a number, and that's kind of confusing. But there's still lots and lots and lots and lots of them. But Corey in Schenectady, thanks for waiting.
Hi, Matt?
Yeah, it's Matt and Jen. You're on the air.
Hi. I've called before, and I really want to say that I'm sorry. I went off the religious deep end. I really want to give you a heartfelt apology. And I'm all right with the fact that you don't believe in Jesus. I believe that hell's like a state of mind rather than a place of fire and torment. I put myself in that place, with major depressive disorder because of my religious beliefs.
Okay.
And,
I don't remember what you had said before, but I'll accept your apology.
Okay. Thanks. I just want to say I believe in a Jesus for everyone, like a universal Jesus, like a hippie Jesus, Republican, Democrat, Metallica Jesus, and even a Jesus for atheists.
Okay,
I mean,
but I don't know what that means, because if something...
I don't either.
So why do you believe it then? Why? What value? If you don't know what it means, and we can't see any value in it, why would you even say that you believe it? Isn't it just completely irrelevant?
It could be.
Okay.
And you're okay with that?
Yeah. I mean, it's like, if you know, me as with a Christ, I mean, I don't want to say I'm a Christian. Like, it's like AA. I go to AA sometimes, and they say you don't have to call yourself an alcoholic to be a member. And I don't want to call myself Christian. I just believe in Jesus.
Why?
You know, Jesus for.
I got a question. Why would you go to AA if you're not an alcoholic?
That's a good point.
I don't mean to be insulting, Corey, but if you're not for real, there's other callers waiting. Because this just isn't making any sense to me. Do you just not care whether or not what you believe is true?
No, I care. I mean, but like I said, I just believe in a Jesus for everyone.
I don't even know what that means.
That's okay.
Neither does Corey.
Yeah.
And that's what's baffling is...
That's okay.
Why is it okay to say that you believe things when you have no idea what they mean or what use they would be? Why is that okay?
Why do you have a problem with it?
Well, because I prefer to believe as many true things and as few false things as possible. And so if I believe a bunch of things that I don't understand and that are I'm not even sure how you could say that you do, because belief is the acceptance of a proposition as true. And if you don't understand the proposition, I don't even know how you can claim to believe it. So it sounds like to me what you're actually doing is paying lip service to some generic idea in the hopes that you have a broader appeal to people, when really, if something can mean anything to anyone, it means nothing to no one.
And okay, so.
Okay, thanks for calling.
All right.
Later.
Put
down the bong.
I believe in beer and pizza for everyone, but you know.
Yeah.
Those can be demonstrated to be true and tasty.
Some days it's amazing. Leslie in Mobile, thanks. You're on the air.
Hi.
I'm so glad you guys are the host, because you're my favorite host.
Oh, thanks
Thank
so
you.
much.
And I'm sorry, I'm incredibly nervous because I'm
But there's no reason to be nervous, because you've already started off with flattery, and I'm not even my favorite host, so you're doing well.
No, I'm nervous because I'm teetering on the cusp of atheism and theism, and I'm scared and I'm sad, and I'm hoping you guys can talk me down, because you're really rational people.
Okay.
So what are you scared of?
It's going to sound so absurd.
Can't be any more absurd than Corey. Corey set the bar really well for you.
See, that's why I like you guys. You're very rational. No, it sounds so silly to normal people, but I'm a cat lady, and
I got 4 cats.
Yeah, I got 3.
I knew Jim would have cats. She just has that cat lady quality.
Oh, thank you.
It's Jen, but
And I apologize, but I've lost a lot of cats this year. And one of the ways I used to neurotically comfort myself was saying that I would see them in heaven. But then I've been reading Christopher Hitchens and Dawkins and watching your show, and now I'm realizing I don't really believe that. Mm-hmm. And I don't know what to do with the grief. And I don't know if I believe, and I'm kind of afraid not to. Like, I won't see them again.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think the only way to deal with grief is just to experience it. Don't try to put it off. I mean, everyone I've known that's ever tried to avoid feeling those feelings has suffered for it. They've had a lot of, if not a major depression period, but at least they have suffered longer and more dramatically than they needed to. So I would encourage you just to experience those feelings. Those are real. It happens. I mean, I lost a cat earlier this year, and you know, it's not fun. And
No.
and
Go ahead.
you know, it's part of life.
It's hard
though.
to accept that you're not going to see them again.
I
Yeah.
know, but you know what? You know what helps, especially with animals, is that you know that as long as they were on this planet, you treated them as well as you possibly could, and you gave them the best life you could.
Well, yeah, they're a bit spoiled.
Well, then there you go. I mean,
and I'm gonna actually rant for a minute, and this is no way directed at you. This is me taking pot shots at religion.
I'm all for that. I've always been anti-religion. I just
my
always
wife
comforted myself with Sky Daddy.
Yeah, my wife wants us to point out, and rightfully so, that you should hit up Google for grief beyond belief, and
Okay.
It's a new initiative. There's lots of great things that are happening in the atheist community. We're branching out as we grow beyond simply, hey, let's go down and have a drink and rag on religion for the night. We have the Recovering from Religions group, which deals with people who are suffering from like PTSD type effects from leaving religion and losing their support networks. Nate Phelps gave a great talk at ApostleCon on this. He's Fred Phelps' son. Talked about his indoctrination and abuse and his escape at the age of 18 and how long it took him to put his life back together. There's also the Clergy Project geared at ministers who are non-believing and stuff.
Yeah, I've watched that. I actually was not raised with any religion, but my family was raised with there's a God.
Yeah.
You know, no religion, and I hate all religions.
So let's see, one of the things is, though, were you raised with this idea that there's a heaven?
Yeah, I'm OCD, and you always ask the question, what can religion provide that secular means cannot? And I can tell you, OCD management is one of them.
Well, see, now I'm going to have to still disagree. I think that you can do OCD management without appealing to religion. One of the things that, and the reason I wanted to rant about this is, what religions do, both structured and unstructured, these false ideas about gods and heavens and hells and things, is they set up false expectations. And so while people say, oh, religion is a great tool for helping people manage their grief, I completely disagree. What I think religions tend to do is give people false expectations about life and never teach them, give them the tools that they need to deal with the loss of life and how to grieve appropriately. It's natural for you to be upset. Yeah. Well, the idea that I'm not going to go on to live in any kind of afterlife encourages me to do a better job of treating people right the first time, of making sure that I don't wait till the last minute to tie up loose ends or make apologies, or and also when someone dies, rather than fancifully thinking, oh, I'm going to see them again in the happy place, and ignoring my real feelings, I'm now allowed to grieve and cry and look back on the life that we shared together. And as Jen pointed out, think about the positive aspects of these cats. And grief is real. It doesn't matter whether you've got a pet roach or you're talking about your parent or your child. If you've become emotionally attached, I mean, I imagine you could even suffer grief over inanimate objects, you know, your car or whatever.
Sure.
These are real things, and we diminish them we diminish people's grief by pretending and giving them fantasyland solutions, which also, by the way, encourages people not to take the steps to treat people right the first time and deal with people in the one and only life we know. If there is an afterlife, treat it like a bonus. And while your call doesn't actually address this, one of the things I get from people who are falling away from religion is a constant fear of, I don't believe this anymore, but I'm constantly terrified by what if I'm wrong? What happens if I die?
The Pascal's wager, I know.
Yeah. If I end up in hell.
That makes perfect sense.
And
it's very frightening. I don't believe in hell. I never have, but I've always been very afraid of just being ignored or being wrong or, you know, being denied something. I don't know. It sounds absurd, I know, and I apologize.
No. It's absolutely fine. And the people that I'm talking to are the people that do have these concerns that you don't necessarily have. And I always ask them, how much time have you spent worrying about other religions' heavens and hells? Because inevitably they're only worried about one religion, the one that they left or the one that is the majority one in their area, and they haven't spent a minute thinking about what they think about
Hindus or Buddhists, yeah.
whose hell are you going to avoid and whose heaven are you going to seek and what's the justification for it. And if it turns out that I'm wrong and I end up standing before some God someday, I have the comfort of, number one, I have the comfort of having been intellectually honest, both in my thoughts about the subject and in the pursuit of it. And if it turns out that like somebody like the character of God in the Bible is the actual God, I'll have the comfort of knowing that, yeah, sure, he could send me to hell and squash me like a bug, but I'm morally superior to that thug.
Yeah, no, the God of the Bible is an ass.
Yeah.
I'm with you there. I just, I have a really hard time of letting go of the things I love.
That happens to a lot of people.
Parrot and buzzies and.
I encourage you to get another cat and love it just as much.
Yes.
Oh, you don't have to worry about that. I just, it's hard to let go of things, and I'm OCD, and I'm scared of everything, and it really has helped me a lot to talk to you guys, because I really do think I'm an atheist. It's just hard to accept when you're crazy as a bug.
So you don't believe in a God?
I really don't.
Then you're an atheist.
You're an atheist.
Welcome to the club.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, they're all clapping. We'll get you a membership card and the obligatory baby that you have to eat later on.
Yeah.
Okay, so I have to let go of the Rainbow Bridge and cat heaven and just accept that I'm an atheist?
Yep. Love the cats that are still here.
Yep.
Let the other ones rest. Thanks.
That's fantastic advice. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Leslie.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, yay. All right, so cat lovers unite.
You know, that Rainbow Bridge thing, I never got any comfort from that. And after my Persian cat died a few years ago, I sent a little note over to the vet's office saying never ever put that crap in with, you know, the ashes and everything when they come back. Not helpful. So, yeah.
Oh, wait, we've got, oh, by the way, after the show's over, there are some individuals who get together and go to dinner at Threadgill's. I can't tell you what to do with your time, but it's at 301 West Riverside Drive. I think that's where some people are going. Can't tell you what to do.
Could be, yeah.
I don't know. Anyway, is it Linus?
Yes.
In Lithuania?
Yes.
What time is it there?
It's 1 o'clock in the night.
Oh, well, thanks for staying up late to call us.
Okay, thanks.
Okay.
So
Go ahead, you're on the air.
yeah, okay. So my question is to you is that if basically your show like this, I heard because there's a harm that religion does. It's like it harms somebody, and I agree with that. Now, but when religious people say to atheists, like Stalin was an atheist and he did bad things, Richard Dawkins says he didn't do it in the name of atheism.
Correct.
Right.
But when you ask, what is atheism? When you ask atheists, what is atheism? They say it's a lack of belief in God.
Yep.
So
Right.
My question: how is it possible to do anything
You can't.
in a lack of belief of anything? Like
You can't.
I will kill you in the name of a lack of belief of unicorns.
Yeah.
Nothing.
Yeah, but people don't do that.
Nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're exactly right. Atheism on its own, without adding anything to it, doesn't lead you to anything else. It's a single position on a single issue. There are, though, positions that are consistent with atheism, and when you combine atheism with, for example, humanism, secular humanism, you can reach conclusions about how we interact. And when you take atheism and combine it with ideas that religion necessarily needs to be opposed, you can end up with state-enforced anti-religious regimes, which, while they're not a product directly of atheism, atheism doesn't have any tenets or dogma. There's no book or authority that you can point to that say, look, this says to do this. That's not true for religions. If you look at, for example, Christianity, the Bible flatly endorses slavery, explicitly, and so when people engage in slavery, they can point to the Bible and say, look, this is consistent with the directives that are given to me in my holy book. You just can't do that with atheism.
Yes. So what I'm saying is, atheist always escapes a judgment in that way.
Yeah.
Always.
Yeah, the same
like
way-
position without responsibility.
You know who else escapes judgment? People who are innocent.
Yeah.
It doesn't. You're pointing to this and saying, "Oh, you've got a get out of jail free card." Yes, and you could have one too if you give up the immoral holy books that people keep pointing to say this is what I use to govern my life. Give it up.
Yeah, so I understand, but it's unfair because
No,
if
it's
you-
not. Because let me tell you something. You're comparing apples to oranges here because atheism doesn't lead to anything, any conclusion. So you can't decide to commit mass murder on the basis of atheism. You also can't decide to commit mass murder on the basis just of theism. So if all you believe is that some God exists, you're technically a theist. That doesn't get you to anything else.
Correct.
What gets you to something else is some doctrine or dogma that goes with that belief.
Yeah, it's like here's one group that has a rule book that they're going to follow, and here's another group that doesn't have a rule book. You can't point to all the people without a rule book and say that their actions are tied to their lack of a rule book. I mean, you acknowledge this yourself. But if they do have a rule book and they're following it, it's completely fair to point out that what they're doing on behalf of their rule book, if it's immoral, their rule book's to blame.
Okay, I agree, but now I want to turn it around.
Okay.
Okay.
So if Stalin killed somebody, there is no book in atheism which says it's wrong, and in Christianity there is a book which says not to kill. For example, you can point to it and say you made a wrong.
Correct. I don't say that someone is wrong to kill people because of atheism. You can't get to any conclusion
Right.
from it. I have other reasons for pointing to why people are wrong. And I don't need a book or a God to know that it's wrong to kill people.
No, it's not wrong to kill people in America. It's done all the time.
Okay. First of all, we're not just cowboys running around killing people. But
let me
but the
finish
fact.
my point.
Hang on. I'll let you finish your point. The fact that something happens all the time doesn't have any bearing on whether or not it's actually right or wrong. There are plenty of wrong things that happen all the time.
Yeah, but that's not the point I'm making.
I know.
I'm making when a rule like a judge in Texas or wherever rules somebody to be killed because he killed somebody in a court of law.
Yep.
Right.
So he has a death sentence. That's killing, and
Yes.
it's okay in America.
Well,
So,
it is
yeah.
it is legally permissible. Whether or not it's moral is a completely separate question. And there are plenty of people who think that the death penalty is immoral just blanket wide, and there are others who think that the death penalty is immoral in practice due to limitations of what we can demonstrate and not, and there are other people who are okay with it. It's not a settled question. So whether or not something's legal is completely separate from whether or not it's moral.
Okay, so how do you come up with rules what is legal?
Yeah. Oh, with rules that are legal? Go ahead.
Well, that's a complicated question.
Yeah, it's big. Basically, we have a system whereby we have foundational freedoms, and then you begin with every freedom, and then you begin to limit them based on what sort of interactions need to take place. My right to swing my arms around in somebody else's personal space. And you have legislators and you have voting, and sometimes some people vote the wrong way. They vote for things that are not necessarily moral. It happens, and so it's a long process of correcting. If you want to know the bigger question about how do you develop, for example, a secular moral system, it's too big to handle with what time we have left on the show, but if you Google superiority of secular morality, you'll find 2 different talks that I gave on the subject. And also Sam Harris's Moral Landscape outlines one potential pathway to this, although not everybody necessarily agrees with that. But the simple version is we are physical beings in a physical universe, and there are truths about what sort of effects actions have on us. We are forced to share space. Cooperation has been shown to be much more beneficial to all of us than a lack of cooperation. I'd rather not die, and I'd rather not have my stuff taken, and so it's at least in my best interest to set up a system with other people who would rather not die and rather not have their stuff taken, to ensure that we set up a system of laws that discourages and punishes those instances where people are killing and stealing. You begin with very simple ideas like life is generally preferable to death. Pleasure is generally preferable to pain. Health is generally preferable to sickness. Sometimes those are going to come into conflict. There are lots of complex situations, but there's a lot of simple situations and general rules that we can sort out. And because for any given situation there's a finite set of possible actions, it's pretty easy to look at the consequences of those actions and say, some of these are better than others, which means that there must be some finite set of actions that represent the moral pinnacle for that situation. I mean, there's a lot that goes into this, and it's much, much more complex than thou shalt not, which is the oversimplified version of morality that far too many people adhere to, and then inject their own opinions and preferences and do what's in their own best interest without perhaps looking at the broader picture. It's a complicated landscape, and it's certainly not something we're going to answer in 2 minutes on the show.
Yeah, I agree. So I agree with what you say, but what you're saying is that, in fact, you can go to heaven and you would still need the same rules of cooperation and for heaven to be heaven, that everybody would be okay with.
Well, I don't.
You would insult everybody and so on.
I don't have any
general philosophical rules for any community to be okay.
I don't believe in a heaven.
Yeah, I understand, but anywhere there are conscious beings, they would need to follow the rules you set out to be harmonious and not to kill each other and be happy and so on.
If they're a social species, yes, they're going to need some social rules.
So you didn't come up with anything new, it's just general logic.
Yeah,
okay?
I'm not claiming that I've come up with anything earth-breaking or earth-shattering. I might have. Here's the thing. Neither has, for example, the Bible. Nobody needed thou shalt not kill. People understood about not killing other people long beforehand.
That's not true. That's not true.
No.
It's not true? So
killed all kinds of people in all kinds of rituals.
So you're saying that before Moses got the Ten Commandments, nobody knew that it was wrong to kill people?
Yeah, not everybody, not nobody, but many barbaric nations killed young people. Just, for example, in my country, in Lithuania, before Christianity, they would take a virgin and throw below the building and kill her, that the building would be strong in the future.
Well, you know what? There's a lot of passages in the Bible that talk about them sacrificing virgins.
Yeah,
and that's even after Moses got the Ten Commandments.
I'm baffled by this claim.
I mean,
so you're pointing to specific incidences in even the modern world. But what you said was that before Moses got the commandment, thou shalt not kill, nobody had any understanding that they shouldn't kill people.
I didn't say nobody, but many nations.
No.
That's absurd. The Hammurabi Code was out before then, and it includes prohibitions against killing. And the only thing, you know what you need to have to understand that you shouldn't kill people? A brain. All you need is to be alive and not want to die to understand why it's wrong to kill people. This stuff is not nearly as hard as some people make it out to be.
Yeah. I mean, no, think about this. I mean, you accept the fact that we, at one point when there were very few humans on the planet, we roved around the planet in hunter-gatherer bands of anywhere from 50 to about 150 people, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so what do you think would happen to somebody that killed somebody in a hunter-gatherer band?
I don't know.
Well, either somebody in the band would kill that guy who killed someone for no reason, or he would be ejected from the group. And you know what?
What if you kill somebody from other group?
Well, that happens sometimes.
Yes,
but
so there is
normal.
There is a lot of problems when you're talking about in-group and out-group relations, where people can rationalize violating the rights of the other group. And that's how we got slavery. But the thing is, if you ever want to know why slavery was wrong, all you had to do was ask a slave. If you ever want to know why mistreating someone in an out-group is wrong, you just need to talk to the individuals in that out-group. And this stuff happened. We didn't come from a whole bunch of insular communities. We came from warring communities, but they also intermarried and interbred. So let me just say that since none of us here are experts, I find it patently absurd to suggest that people didn't understand that killing was wrong until Moses got the Ten Commandments in any significant sense. It's just bizarre. So do some research, see if you can find out what those ancient people thought, and if they were just basically sanctioning murder wholesale, that'd be interesting to know.
Okay, so why do Muslims throw stones at women who were like unfaithful to their husbands?
Because their religion says
today?
so.
Yeah, because
so why do Christians do not do that? So
because Christianity has been dragged kicking and screaming into the 21st century, or at least into the 19th century, by the secularist people who have surrounded them, who said, you know what, we know your holy book says that you can have slaves and that you can beat them and how much you can buy them for, and we know that your holy book tells you how to trick even your own fellow Jews into being your slaves forever and driving a spike through their ear and marking them so, and we know that your holy book says all these nasty things about women having to keep their mouths shut and being subservient to men, but we're not going to tolerate that shit, so y'all better change. And Christianity changed.
Why Islam doesn't change?
Because Islam hasn't had that same sort of influence everywhere, but it has in some places, which is why there are Muslims living in some countries like the United States who are now, I don't know, getting reality shows and getting tattoos. It's going to happen. Eventually the world will be secularized and rationalized, and religion will take the place of a kind of backward activity, and the beliefs will be relegated to a tier alongside the earth is flat and nobody knew that murder was illegal or was wrong before Moses. That's where we're headed.
So it's absolutely. For example, in Japan, it's a very developed country, but women are very much treated very badly. And for example, when a food is distributed for homeless people, only men gather because women are like shunned. And it's not a Christian country, and it's very developed, and it's very 21st century. So you don't. Well, you want to see what you want to see. You want to see like everything is getting secularized and equal and so on. But
no, you don't have. That's not the result. That's not the result of humanism in action. There's inequality everywhere. This is the funny thing, is that when you criticize somebody's religion, inevitably what they'll do is they'll point to other things that are worse. You can point to worse things all day long, and it doesn't do anything to elevate the status of the religion that you accept. What I'm talking about, I'm not sanctioning the way women are treated in Japan. I'm opposed to that as well. I'm talking about a humanistic, rational world of equality, which we don't have anywhere. So there's no country you can point to and say, oh, well, here's what happens when you have an atheist nation. It just doesn't exist yet. What you can do is you could start off like you did, pointing to Stalin, but that's not the sort of principles of secular humanism, which is the sort of interactions that I'm advocating. You have nothing to point to.
Okay. What we do have to point to are things like the Pew Research poll that looks at religiosity in nations and measures of societal health.
Yep. And
the most secular nations have the highest rating of societal health.
And I apologize, Linus, but they're actually putting the credits up, so the show's over. Feel free to call in next week or some other time and discuss it some more. I appreciate it. Thanks so much for everybody for showing up this week.
Yes, thank you.
We'll be back next time. And to the people who didn't get through on the phone, I'm sorry. It's a good show, but try and call another week. Bye-bye.